Intelligence distinguishes humans from all other species. But why does one baby grow up brighter than another? Now, we're on the brink of finding out. All summer, Robert Plomin has been waiting for results which will be the culmination of 6 years' hard work. He's aiming to find the first gene influencing human intelligence, and he thinks he's very close.
I don't know why I've always been fascinated with this topic. In part, I worry that it's an orneriness in me, that at a time in the early 70s when it was almost forbidden to think about genetic influences, I looked around and saw that it must be true that there are genetic influences. And now it tags on to the revolution in molecular genetics that allows us to find specific genes. So it's fortuitous in a way, but all the timing and everything I've done just seems to have clicked. And I sort of learned in life to pay attention to things that work. They're sort of screaming at you, this is something you ought to study. Hello, is Mike Chorney there?
Robert Plomin moved to London from Pennsylvania 3 years ago to work at the Institute of Psychiatry. He's one of the world's finest behavior geneticists. Still in his 40s, he's already published over 200 papers. His current project is scientifically and socially the most challenging he's ever done.
This is a project of enormous potential importance, because if Robert Plomin does discover that there is a gene which makes a significant input to IQ, that's the first piece of this particular part of the jigsaw. It's going to change the way we think about human beings. Because up to now, many people have not wanted to believe that there is a genetic component in intelligence. And the easy way of thinking about people is to think about us as though we're a piece of putty that can be entirely moulded by family, by schools, by society, and so on. But if it's the case that our intelligence is partly shaped by our genes, that alters that picture dramatically.
But because it's controversial, Plomin's work also raises fear and opposition.
The media would immediately pick up on that and say, okay, this is it, this is the IQ gene, some people have it, some people don't have it, and it would just have a huge effect of making people believe that everything we are, is determined by our genes.
Plomin is undeterred by his critics. His sights are set on basic science that he believes will take us beyond the nature-nurture debate. Finding new, hard evidence is what his work is all about.
Specifically, what we're funded to do is to find genes for G, by which I mean general intelligence. And the way we're going about this is to use new molecular genetic techniques to compare children of different ability levels. We have two groups of children who are of average G, or cognitive ability, and then we're looking at children of super high ability.
We all know intelligence varies. It's like height and weight. Some have a little, most have a middling amount, and a few people have a lot. Robert Plomin has been comparing the DNA of a control group with an average IQ score of 100 with a group selected for extremely high IQ scores. So what Plomin needs is the blood of a genius. Naturally, he went to Iowa. Iowa State University hosts a summer school for some remarkable children. They're selected from all over the Midwest for their acute intellectual abilities.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight
Their parents range from factory workers to financiers. Assistance is available for anyone who needs help with the fees. Here, the students shake down after an intensive day slaving over a hot textbook. Summer school clearly has its attractions.
The stereotype view of these kids was probably best witnessed by my daughter, who wanted to come up to the dance too. I think felt like she wanted to go to the nerd zoo and see what these kids were like who wanted to go to school in the summer. So we came up, and within 5 or 10 minutes, they were all dancing together, and she was amazed that kids that would come to school in the summer were just like her.
The summer school was founded by a world expert on educating the gifted, Camilla Benbow.
We basically have about 300 students here every summer, and they come here from between 1 to 6 weeks, and they study one topic in depth. And there are 12 to 14-year-olds, and they really come here for the intellectual challenge.
He's not playing computer games. Brandon wrote the program for this poker game himself. Like all the other students here, he passed a US university entrance exam 5 years early and came in the top 1% nationally.
Back at home, I'm used to being, the one that always gets asked questions. How do I do this? How do I do that? And I'm the one that answers them. Here, I find myself asking other people that, which is kind of neat, that there are actually people, that I guess know more than I, because I'm really not used to that.
Oh, what are we going to do with it? Okay, what are you doing? Oh, no.
As well as offering an obvious intellectual challenge, this summer school is an oasis for children who often feel socially isolated. It's not all fun being top of the class. In regular school, there are downsides to having a brain the size of a planet.
People know who the higher people are, and they'll be like, I want to sit by Carrie because, she always gets the answers right. Or, oh, we're getting in groups. I want to be in Carrie's group because, she'll do all the work. She's the smart one,
I don't want you to let me mirror a mirror, okay?
Being labelled bright can be hard to live up to.
Once you start to achieve and your school sees you as a talented and gifted, then it's like you're always supposed to be that way. There's never any time to let it down. And it's once you bring yourself to that standard, that's where you stay. And, failure, I think, is like one thing that a lot of us are really scared of.
Oh my God. What have you done to my hair?
How many chromosome 1s do you have?
2.
Jay Staker is teaching these children the equivalent of a 1-year undergraduate course in genetics in just 3 weeks.
Are you all normal like me?
Yes.
So you got 1 chromosome from mom, 1 from dad. The first week that I started teaching, I started preparing 6 months ahead, and I just had volumes of material, and I thought, I've got this really under control, because I knew the level, and I thought I could prepare mentally. At lunch the first day, I was just in a heap and just stunned with the amount of work I had done that morning. I'd taught what I would normally teach in weeks and weeks in my general classroom in 4 hours. There's 1 tube for each person.
Uh-oh, nothing like sloshing salt water in the mouth.
Pretty Tommy, bottoms up.
They're using a saline wash to get DNA from their cheek cells. DNA that could have an intriguing tale to tell.
It's hard to determine what your genes, what they can code for, what they make of you, if it's just your physical appearance or if it also maybe has something to do with your intelligence and your behaviors. I don't know. That's something, I'm sure they'll find out in the future.
It'll be 116 most time. It fluctuates a little. I think these kids are bright because of the cards they've been dealt. The genetics that they have give them a range of intelligence which is very high.
We're going to skip well 2 and 3.
What has been done in the home, academically, other things can help them reach the higher end of the range, but they all started out with a full deck.
And having a hand with 4 aces is just what Robert Ploman is looking for. These children are way out on the right of the bell curve. Plomin will compare their DNA with the DNA of average IQ children. He has already had one promising result and is hoping to confirm his finding.
How would someone score extremely highly on a test like of cognitive ability? Say, not just top 1% or 1% of 1%, but really getting out there in 1 in a million. It seemed to me that the only way that could happen is if you have most of the positive factors and very few of the negative factors. You have to have everything going for you to score that highly. So we thought by focusing on the extremely high functioning individuals, we'd have a better chance of finding genes, not just for genius, but genes that account for genetic influence on intelligence throughout the whole range of cognitive functioning.
Blood from the super bright children and from average IQ children is sent from all over the Midwest to laboratories in Cardiff and here to Hershey, Pennsylvania, where Karen Chorney begins working on one of the samples. The team are looking for any one of the many genes influencing normal intelligence. It's an ambitious undertaking.
How do the IDs look?
Mike and Karen Chorney work on the project with Robert Plomin. Mike recalls the skepticism surrounding the research when he first became involved.
The approach of looking for genes involved in this process seemed relatively remote to a lot of the traditional geneticists who are approached, and not something really worthy of assailing. So I think the ethical issue and the issue that probably one would come up empty for the amount of work that would be involved are two things that would scare a number of individuals off initially. I think that was the underlying negativism that associated with the project.
The centrifuge separates the red and white blood cells from which Karen will extract DNA. They expect that everyone will have some of the genes they're looking for, but that the brighter people will have more of them. So they have selected samples of DNA from extremely high IQ subjects in the hope of finding one of these genes.
Once you have the DNA, then we genotype everybody's DNA for certain markers. And what we're looking for are DNA markers that differ between children in the control group and children in the high group.
Intelligence genes may sit on many chromosomes, so the Plomin team have picked one they know well, chromosome 6, to start their inquiry. They end up with an X-ray film which, to a trained eye, shows which forms of several genes each person has. These uninspiring-looking marks could tell us something new about the nature of our own intelligence. Back in London, it is Cardiff's data which has come in first, eagerly awaited by Robert Plomin and his assistant, Talia Ely.
I'm going to... Shall I just do it straight into a chi-square, or shall I do frequencies first?
Maybe frequencies first. Is that just...
Given the controversy his research creates, success may be a mixed blessing.
It would be dishonest to say I don't care whether we get positive results or not. I mean, our teams have put in an amazing amount of work over the year. These are incredible samples. You know, no one has ever had samples for anything that are as carefully selected and as extreme as these samples. And it's an exciting and important topic. So, you know, of course it would be great if we found a gene. But I must say, every time before when we've gotten excited about it and then we said, no, it's not good enough, we don't really think that is something we're going to publish, my overriding sensation was one of relief.
If Plomin doesn't get a result, no one will be happier than David King, editor of Genethics News, a leading campaigner against Plomin's IQ research.
When I first heard about the possibility of Robert Plomin and his colleagues looking for genes that influence IQ, and I think that they might actually find something, I was really horrified, because the first thing that struck me is the huge eugenic implications of that. People would start wanting to use those genes in prenatal screening to see how intelligent their unborn children are likely to be. And that's a prospect that I find horrendous.
I'd much rather do my research than get involved in those sorts of firestorms. I don't think it's an exaggeration, and this area just does get people going.
I'm Jewish, and my people has known the implications of this kind of approach to human life, really, and that's my fundamental reason for being very, very scared by what Robert Plomin wants to do.
Plomin is used to attacks on his work, but he believes investigating the role genes play in human behavior is too important to ignore.
So that's exactly the same as we found before, which isn't surprising. It just means everything's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me punch this button when you get there, all right?
Okay.
Plomin is particularly interested in a gene on the short arm of chromosome 6. In an earlier trial, the bright kids had one form of this gene more often than the average kids. Plomin has doubled the size of the average control group to see if this confirms his previous result.
62, 11.4.
11.4%.
So
combined, very similar.
Yes.
Come down a little bit.
So that's not, mind-boggling, but the results, are very much much stronger, for this original sample with a double control size. So now the real big question is whether or not the new DNA from all of these new SMPY samples are going to come out like the high group.
Mm-hmm.
So, ta-da.
Ta-da.
Now it's crunch time. They want to know if the form of the promising gene occurs much more often in their new sample of very smart children. They're looking for a wide margin between the average children and the extremely bright ones.
There you are. All yours.
Okay, are we ready?
Right, let's go back up to the top. So, group 1, which is all mids.
It's bad news. The gap between the two groups is not big enough to get excited about. These results won't make a top science journal.
Super highs, 18.8.
Right in between.
Right in between.
Sort of 18.8%, right? Well, so it is exactly in between.
Plomin is disappointed. The promising gene did not deliver. Now they must wait for the data from the Hershey team, who are working on another part of chromosome 6, and who are now their best hope. The search for intelligence genes follows decades of scientific inquiry. IQ tests were devised to try and measure a person's general intelligence.
Now, here's a group of men doing a general intelligence test. This is our first means of sorting them out. Sergeant, give me a matrix book, please. Thank you. Now, there's a set of problems in this book. They're quite easy to start with, but they get rather more difficult as you go on. You see the idea. There's a piece missing from each diagram, and there are 6 alternatives that fit in.
Take up your pencils. Start now.
Many argue that these odd-looking tests are the triumph of a century of psychology. But they have vocal detractors and a controversial history. A long tradition of research into intelligence continues at the University of Edinburgh. Professor Ian Deary is doing imaginative work, exploring how the brain processes information and its relationship to IQ. His work has its roots in the 19th century.
It's common to take intelligence test research back to Francis Galton in late Victorian England. He came up with the idea that individuals differed in the amount of general mental ability they had. he believed that it had a roughly normal distribution in the population. So like height, some people had a little, some people had a lot, but most people had a medium amount. He set up a laboratory in South Kensington where, in a reverse from today's practices, he actually was paid by his subjects to test their mental ability. So people would come into the South Kensington laboratory and pay threepence and eventually sixpence to have their mental abilities tested. Proper research on intelligence, though, really begins with about Charles Spearman in 1904. He gave tests to school children. In fact, largely he looked at their scores on their school exams, and he found a surprising thing to him, that all the school results were positively correlated. That is, the pupils who did well on one test also did well, or tended to, on all of the others. And he came up with, in 1904, the idea of G, or general intelligence.
The same year, the French psychologist Alfred Binet invented the first recognizably modern intelligence test. Binet's aim was to identify children of low intelligence so they could be given appropriate extra help at school. The recruitment demands of World War I provided a massive impetus to the growth of testing. Millions of new recruits were assessed on their IQ score before being dispatched to face the enemy. In 20s America, multicultural immigration exposed a serious flaw in the tests. For someone from a poor Russian village, spotting the missing element in these pictures was hardly a fair match. Critics were quick to point out cultural test bias. But something even more pernicious would follow. Are You Fit to Marry?, an early propaganda film, illustrates a new and infamous abuse of biology, eugenics. Outside a Chicago hospital, a father exhorts his son to marry someone fit to breed. The moral soon follows.
For the salvation of our race and the health and happiness of every individual, we must stop at its source, the pollution of the bloodstream, by passing sane eugenic laws that would prevent marriages among the unfit.
In the public mind, IQ testing was associated with cruel eugenic programs, such as enforced sterilization, and this created hostility to intelligence research.
Pay attention a moment, everyone, please. You should all have finished part 1 by now. I want you to turn straight over. Whether you finish part 1 or not, start part 2. Right? Turn over.
In Britain, the 11+ exam was the only widely used standardized test. It was phased out in the 60s in response to anxieties about the harmful effect of labeling children. The anti-testing mood prevails to this day. Professor Michael Howe opposes testing. He believes it prejudices children's opportunities.
It makes us put people into categories. It attaches a label. Someone is intelligent, someone is not intelligent. And all too often these labels sort of act as self-fulfilling prophecy.
The sorting out of children at an early stage in their lives, and their ranking and telling them that because you have a low IQ score you'll never achieve anything and you're only good to be a dustman or something, is a horrendous waste of people's potential and abilities.
But in America, testing is an essential part of the education system. It's believed by many to be the bedrock of a meritocracy. The leading testing agency is dazzling in scale.
Educational Testing Service, ETS, is the largest educational testing organization in the world. We have approximately 2,500 employees, 2,500 employees. We have a research division composed of approximately 200 researchers.
A confirming copy does get sent to you at home. It's not a bill, it's just letting you know that his transcript has been sent and $18 has been billed to your credit card.
The tests are the gateway to American universities, costing each student from $20 to $100. It's big money for the ETS, who sell 9 million tests a year. The tests are marked by an optical scanner at a rate of 8,000 an hour. But many people are unconvinced by the technology and feel that multiple choice questions are too crude to capture something as complex as someone's intelligence. Stephen Ceci is an expert on intelligence, and he has some sympathy with these reservations.
Many individuals reflexively reject the idea that IQ is important in any sense in tapping an individual's intelligence. And the reason for their skepticism isn't hard to understand, because they're surrounded with anomalies, with counterexamples, people who may have quite average or below average IQs, and yet who think in very complex ways in their everyday work and social lives. So the impulse is to say, well, that IQ stuff is just book learning. That measures school smarts. These people are really good carpenters or scientists or partners or whatever, and there's an intelligence to that. And it deserves to be recognized as an intelligence. And by the way, parenthetically, I can say the other side of that is there are many high IQ people who don't appear able to find their way out of a wet paper bag. And one wonders if intelligence really is measured by an IQ test, why they don't seem to be more generally intelligent in their everyday lives. And yet, while acknowledging those anomalies, the notion of general intelligence has been shown over and over again to be more predictive, even though it is not a perfect predictor.
Because IQ is the most reliable predictor of performance, better than socioeconomic status, the British Army rejected selection by interview in favour of state-of-the-art psychometrics, or IQ testing. Practice doesn't make perfect for this kind of test.
Everyone who enters the army undertakes objective intelligence tests. Some of the tests are different depending on which part of the army they're going into. Nevertheless, they are the basis for all the selection that goes on, taking people from civilian life into the army. We're trying to recruit for potential ability rather than acquired qualifications, because nobody undertakes military training during their school time or at college, and so we have to train everybody from scratch. The implications of a more technical and sophisticated army are that we must make sure that we get the right people in the right jobs, because when we go to war, we are in a very hard and fast situation. If we haven't got it right, then basically we pay for it.
Testing cognitive abilities rather than school learning gave Corporal Gavin Munro a chance.
We're responsible for about 60 tanks and the harnesses. The works, it is quite technical until we know what you're doing. I'd say it's taken me 5 years to be really confident with the radios and that, and I do know basically what I'm doing now. I didn't actually have any school qualifications, so if it had come down to it and you needed qualifications to get into the army, then yeah, I would have had a problem. I didn't do any exams at school or anything like that, but I've been promoted in the last 3 months, and I'm basically doing quite well. I had a couple of friends that left school with me and joined the army, and a couple of them left with exams, and they're troopers still, funnily enough.
When people talk about intelligence tests just being some academic thing that has no reality in the real world, I think of myself as an example, a counterexample of that. I grew up in Chicago, inner city Chicago, and I had 32 cousins. None of them ever went to college. It was sort of an Irish-Polish family, and everyone went to work. It was a big deal to finish high school, basically. And it was only because of standardized testing that people said, well, did you consider going to this more academically oriented high school?
Plomin credits objective tests rather than family background for his career in academia. Others think that parental support is the key to children's mental abilities. Michael Howe is a leading proponent of the environmentalist position. His new book on IQ outlines his belief that innate ability is the wrong way to think about mental ability.
Come and sit down, please.
Howe's current research explores the relationship between musically gifted children and the parental support that they've received.
Okay, Gwilla, one thing that's fairly clear is that not only do you do a lot of musical activities, but you're pretty good at them compared with a lot of people. Have you any idea about particular reasons why that could be the case?
When I used to go to bed, Dad would be playing and composing at the piano, and I used to hear that, and that maybe had a subconscious influence on me. But I don't really know. It's always been a love of mine, music, and it's just sort of developed as I've grown up, really.
So you've always had it around you, as it were?
Oh yes, it's always been around me, listening to music.
The finding that came out most strongly was that they had enormously supportive parents on the whole. These parents, they were prepared to do a great deal for their children, to sort of make the experience fun, to make it enjoyable, to be generally helpful.
This research has convinced Michael Howe that practice is more important than genes for both music and mental abilities.
Well, I have had a lot of encouragement from my parents, and they were always interested in what I was doing. And teachers as well have always been very encouraging, and I've sort of got on well with them.
Catherine's mother is a music teacher herself.
I think we looked upon the music as a valuable occupation, the fact that we encouraged it, supported it. And I think, therefore, that Catherine saw that it was a worthy thing to spend her time and energies on.
I do think it's vital that there's parental support and encouragement, whatever it is, whether it's music or athletics or chess or anything else. I really do believe that no child will develop without encouragement.
But Robert Plomin says that this kind of research fails to recognise that parents provide genes as well as support to their children.
The problem with environmental research up to now is it's ignored genetics. And that when you study family members, parents and offspring, who are genetically related, and you don't take that into account and you say, well, parents do this to the children, they read to the children, and their children then grow up to do better at school, it's plausible to say, yeah, that might be environmental. But when we really take seriously the importance of genetics, we stop and say, well, wait a minute now, those parents are related to the children genetically. That could be genetic. Genetically mediated, and in fact research in the last decade suggests that that's the best hypothesis now.
Plomin needs some direct evidence if he's to persuade his opponents that genes count. While he waits for new data from Hershey, he's supported by some extraordinary indirect evidence in Hawaii. Oahu, Hawaii. The Kamehameha School was founded by the descendant of the island's last king.
Remember, Hawaiian volcanoes erupt very slowly.
With funding most educators can only dream of, teachers can offer a well-organized and beautiful learning environment that reads like a holiday brochure.
They're not like the other volcanoes.
Visiting the school is Professor Sandra Scarr, one of the world's leading authorities on the influence of upbringing and education on IQ.
Kill everything all around. Move all the plants, move the children. Yay! Good morning, everybody. Once more. We're going to do it once more.
Sandra's very impressed by this school. But does an environment like this boost a child's IQ?
Does the quality of that environment, which in the United States varies from excellent, we have wonderful daycare centers, to dreadful, absolutely awful, impoverished, terrible places. Does the quality of those environments have an effect on children's intelligence or other kinds of functioning, personality and the like? No. I have done 4 studies of this here and in Bermuda and shown no effects of differences in childcare environments. Big family effects, what kind of parents children have profound effects on their intelligence and emotional well-being, but not what kind of daycare environment they're in, even though they're there for 40 to 50 hours a week. It's surprising it has no effects.
To find out whether family effects are mostly genetic or environmental, Sandra did a remarkable study. She found children who had been adopted in the 50s when they were only 2 months old. She wanted to explore what happens when children are raised in genetically unrelated families.
When the long waiting period is over, when the new parents take home the one baby they have lovingly chosen from among all those submitted, they can be reasonably sure they have made no mistake.
Sandra measured their IQ when they were 18 years old and compared it to that of their adoptive parents and siblings to see if 18 years of living together influenced their IQ scores. Did she find the children's IQ resembled their families?
We were quite surprised. I mean, to the contrary, at the end of adolescence, families' differences had no effect on individual differences among those adolescents. They could just as well have been randomly assorted into those families at the average age of 18. They showed no resemblance to each other or to their adoptive parents. It was quite amazing.
Sandra's many studies have persuaded her that children's genes predispose them to have different interests and abilities, which tilt them towards choosing different occupations and environments.
As we watch these children playing, you can see that some of them will learn more than others from the same kinds of exposures. Others will focus on more enduring intellectual interests. In fact, we have a boy who's a real expert on dinosaurs and uses multisyllabic terms to describe them.
Pachycephalosaurus? Wow, okay. And the micropachycephalosauruses are the real small ones, tinier than a chicken. You know how small it was? No, how small? It was this small.
Others will be much more tuned into social interactions and spend more time playing and understanding other humans than some children who are busy with blocks. But here's where genetic differences come to play the role they do, in that they direct children's experiences, how much they learn, how much they can acquire from a given opportunity. You can't program what it is children learn. They're going to learn what it is they're capable of learning. What we must do, however, is provide them with these rich learning opportunities so that everyone can become the best he or she can be.
If genetics are so important, why are brothers and sisters in one family often very different? A shared interest in exploring this question brought together Robert Plomin and his wife, Judy Dunn, a developmental psychologist. Judy recalls how her own children stimulated her work.
It was having the babies that made me curious about psychology, and especially curious about the part that individual differences in children play in the way they develop. If we think about what matters as being the mother's education, the father's professional occupation, the neighborhood they grow up in, the quality of the marriage between the parents, all the old standbys for explaining differences in children's abilities and personality and adjustment, those factors can't explain individual differences between children. And what we've learnt from the work of the behavior geneticists in part is that the differences between children, even those growing up in the same family, are huge.
Big differences between siblings are common, even though they share half their genes. The reason is simple. It's a bit like being dealt a hand of cards. Within one family, genes from both parents are shuffled together at conception. Each brother or sister is dealt a unique combination. From the same two packs, children who are dealt cards can have quite distinct hands. One of the most compelling clues to the importance of genetic influence comes from identical twins who share the same genes. Twins like Caroline and Margaret Shand, who were raised apart from one another, reveal something striking. They were separated at birth and first met aged 68. Even so, like other identical twins who've been studied, their IQ scores look as similar as the same person tested twice. All the evidence from twin and adoption studies suggests a powerful role for genes, but Plomin is looking for direct evidence that genes matter for intelligence.
Those first two sets.
In late July, the long-awaited data from the long arm of chromosome 6 came in from Hershey. Robert Plomin and his assistant Talia Ely worked into the night.
Well, they're definitely significantly different from each other.
They are?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So what is the frequency?
Let me just go back and rerun this.
Plomin hoped to confirm that there was a significant genetic difference between the average control groups and his super smart samples.
Right. We pushed the button, we got the results saying it was significant. So that was terrific, but then we looked at it more carefully and it appeared to be in the opposite direction from the original results.
Hold on, I'll just...
Results in the opposite direction is science speak for a complete calamity. If true, Plomin's whole project was dead in the water.
We ran them through and it looked great at first, and then we suddenly realised it was completely exactly the reverse of what we'd expected to find, which is obviously a total nightmare, because the chances of that happening by chance are tiny weeny, so that would have been just very bizarre. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Still there.
Amazing.
Still there. What else could it be?
You know, I think maybe we should, it's just been too long a day. I think maybe we should just come back tomorrow.
This is a dark night for Plomin. He's facing failure after 6 years' hard work. At home, the scientific paper, which is already sketched out ready for the new results, emphasizes his disappointment.
I like to write an article before we get the results so that I know in my head which way I think it should come out, what we're expecting, and it also sharpens the hypotheses for me and then lets me know when things didn't turn out the way I thought they would.
So far, these results have signally failed to turn out the way Plomin thought they would. It looked as if earlier skepticism surrounding the project was well-founded. Early the next morning, Talia started from scratch. She decided to go back to basics and check on the labels for all sample groups. She searched for any possible mistakes.
I had, in fact, mislabeled the groups. I'd called in the mids and called them the highs, and called in the highs and called them the mids.
Well, how's it looking?
Better?
Better?
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, I think it's sorted. Okay.
Talia checked through the data to see if they came up the way she expected, with the promising gene more frequently in the super high group.
And they are 16.9.
So this looks like it is in the right direction.
It does.
And then the super high group.
The super highs. 34!
Oh, gee, so it is in the right direction.
It is, yeah.
Not only were they significant and significant in the right direction, the results were even better than the original study. So we've started from the ground up, though, so clearly these are right.
I just reread them in this morning and relabeled everything, and
well, fantastic.
It was amazingly exciting for me, and for the others who've been on this project for 6 years or something. It must be mind-blowing. I mean, somebody, said something about, you found the needle in the haystack, and that is a bit what it feels like.
After 6 strenuous years, and in the face of skepticism and criticism, Plomin's team have done it. They've discovered not a gene for genius, but the first of many genes which contribute to normal intelligence. It's called, rather prosaically, IGF2R. Finishing the paper, authored by a dozen international collaborators, is Plomin's first priority. They are the first to make an association between a gene and normal human intelligence.
I really think this is a breakthrough. In the past, we've talked about indirect ways of estimating genetic influence. Now we have a very direct way of estimating a little piece of G that involves DNA itself. And this is important because it will affect neuroscience, that is, people who study the brain, to begin to understand how this gene works to affect general functioning of the brain. But it also has an important impact, I think, that it completely puts aside arguments about whether genes can affect intelligence. Some people will dismiss twin and adoption studies, I think very inappropriately. But it's harder to argue with a piece of DNA.
A piece of DNA may be as innocent as a baby, but the implications of knowing about it are profound.
Anyone can ignore a new piece of science for a certain amount of time, but then the problems start to catch up with us. I think it's important that we do start to think it through, because it has huge social and educational implications. The way we think of our priorities, should we invest in people who have more potential, or should we compensate those who have possibly less genetic potential? These are huge and important social issues which in a democracy we ought to be discussing now.
Plomin's insights are incendiary. What value could they have for us?
This work can help us understand that people differ in propensities and potentialities, and if it can lead to figuring out how we can better respond to these differences and to a more nurturing environment for them, I think it could be a very positive. We should never be scared of knowledge.
But once out of the bottle, this genie could be terrifying.
Some intellectuals seem fearful of what new information about genes and intelligence will bring when the public in general is aware of this information. Therefore, they seem to propose that we should not do this research or suppress the results. I think this is patronizing and condescending toward the public. I think it is terribly unwise scientific policy, and I think ultimately will do great harm. It's always better to have the information. Ignorance is not bliss.
Robert Plomin's team has found the first gene for intelligence, a discovery that's especially significant for parents.
I think finding genetic evidence actually is helpful to parents, especially young, yuppie parents so worried about every little thing that might happen to their children. It makes them relax and perhaps enjoy their children more, and who knows, that may be more facilitative of their child's cognitive development than by flashing cards at them at 9 months of age and making them wonder what this strange world is they're growing up in.